Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Democrats did not just lose the White House yesterday. Republicans retained their majority in both the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives, ensuring that a Republican-driven agenda will likely be felt throughout the levels of the federal government. Joining me now to talk more about this is Democratic Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. He represents parts of Brooklyn and Queens in the House of Representatives. Welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Errol.
Tough night for everybody. Where were you yesterday?
Well, I was watching the returns with family and friends in Midtown Manhattan, preparing to get over to the Javits Center at the appropriate time once the race was called. I anticipated it would be called for Hillary Clinton. As it turns out, there was no speech to be given at any point during the night or in the wee hours of the morning. And it was a tough night for a lot of folks. We worked as hard as we can to make sure that Hillary Rodham Clinton took the baton from Barack Obama, but the people have spoken, things have gone in a different direction, and now we've got to deal with the reality that Donald Trump is the president-elect.
At what point in the course of the night did you realize that things weren't going according to plan?
Well, I think when she lost Florida and lost Ohio, at that point things became a little bit precarious. Things tightened up in Virginia, and it appeared that Michigan and Wisconsin were at risk. At that point in time, I think it became obvious to all of us that this was going to be a long night, and there was a chance that it can go in a different direction, and obviously it worked out in that fashion. We point out this wasn't a complete repudiation of the Democratic Party and of Hillary Rodham Clinton. She did win a majority of Americans, but at the end of the day, our constitutional fabric is such that the presidency goes through the Electoral College.
Sure.
And that's the reality that we're going to have to deal with, and it's why Donald Trump is the president-elect.
You were a very active surrogate for Hillary Clinton. You went anywhere that they sent you, but I know you enough to know that you probably didn't just say, hey, where do you want me, and just get a plane ticket. You probably had some level of conversation with the strategist. Was it your sense that they kind of knew what they were doing as far as how they used you and how they were trying to sort of build up their vote around the country?
Well, in the last few weeks in particular, I thought that they were very strategic in terms of sending members of Congress, particularly the Congressional Black Caucus, to places like North Carolina. I spent time in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida, which were obviously three very significant states. I will note that toward the end of the campaign, there was some indication that there were problems in Michigan because one of the Michigan members of Congress who was going to travel to other battleground states was asked to remain and begin to focus on some efforts. And so perhaps there were warning signs, but obviously they didn't rise to the level with an intense response sufficient to ward them off.
We have heard a broad conversation going on about some civil war within the Republican Party. That still might happen, but what's going to happen now within the Democratic Party? Is there going to be, beyond the usual recriminations, people will say, oh, she should have made a trip to Wisconsin, they should have put more money on the ground or more into television and so forth. Beyond that, are there fundamental conversations that are going to happen within the Democratic Party?
Absolutely. We'll return to Washington, D.C., and I think, first of all, we've got to figure out as a party who's going to be the loyal opposition over the next 2 years in both the House and the Senate, how we approach and engage a Trump presidency. Now, I think that we're going to have to fiercely defend our values and stand up to him when he's wrong as president, but also be prepared to work with Donald Trump when he's correct. And we're going to have to sort out the issues where there will be opportunity to find common ground. One of those may be transportation and infrastructure. Donald Trump, in many ways, Errol, as you know, ran as an economic populist with policies that are not inconsistent with the views amongst many in the Democratic Party, myself included, as to how we help out working families and middle-class folks and those who aspire to be part of the middle class. So maybe we can find common ground. What we need to evaluate as Democrats is why we lost so many working-class Americans to Donald Trump, when in our view, we're the party of the working class American.
Yeah, and was that a matter of rhetoric? Was that a matter of record? Was that a matter of these extraneous factors like the emails and the scandals and so forth?
Well, I think Jim Comey parachuting into a presidential election with 11 days left,
the FBI
dropping
director.
a bomb, the FBI director dropping a bomb on Hillary Clinton without any evidence of wrongdoing, hiding behind his desk for the next several days in a building once occupied by J. Edgar Hoover, and then coming out shortly before the election saying, my bad, nothing was wrong, was not helpful, particularly at a time when millions and millions of folks were early voting. But at the end of the day, I think that on a whole host of issues, there was a failure to adequately communicate our vision for building an economy for everyone. And Donald Trump is a candidate who spoke in headlines, right? The system is rigged. I'm going to build a wall. The trade deals are bad. We don't win anymore. Make America great again. We tend to speak as Democrats in fine print. We've got the policy proposals, but we've got to figure out a better way to communicate our message directly to the American people because we're right on our ideas.
You mentioned the FBI director. At least one of your colleagues has suggested that an investigation is in order. Do you agree with that?
I don't know that an investigation is in order, but he certainly needs to come before the House and the Senate Judiciary Committee and explain himself. This was an unprecedented action that apparently, based on his own decision, had no justification.
Sure.
And so he owes an explanation to Congress. More importantly, he owes an explanation to the American people as to why he took this step inconsistent with Justice Department policy and probably altered the course of a presidential and congressional election.
In our last minute, parent to parent, well, we have sons that are around the same age. It was a difficult conversation I had with my son. He and all his other middle school buddies had all, they took their own little vote in school and they talked with the teachers. There was really quite a lot of sort of emotion around this. And I think it stemmed in part from the notion that you have a president-elect who did most of what we have taught our kids not to do. Bullying, insults, lying, all the whole cast of bad behavior. What did you end up saying to your son?
Well, that this is the democratic process and that America is bigger than any one person. But it certainly is the case, Errol. My youngest son, who goes to middle school in Brooklyn, came home and made it clear that there were counselors and a lot of community conversations taking place between teachers and students, a lot of tears that were being shed. This was a traumatic presidential election for a whole host of folks, particularly young students and children of color who have known sort of Barack Obama as their only presidential figure for the last 8 years, and now all of a sudden you have someone who is engaged in such horrendous behavior on the campaign trail. We can only hope that he turns it around, Donald Trump, as president and conducts himself with grace and respect and dignity.
Okay, we will talk again very soon. Thanks a lot for coming by tonight. We're going to take a short break now. Straight ahead, how could the polling in last night's race turn out to be so wrong? We'll talk it over with NY1 pollster Mickey Blum. Later on tonight, Curtis Sliwa and Herson Barrero stayed up all night to watch the results come in. They're going to give us their take on the weekly political rundown. Stay with us.